featuring Lee Sin, the blind monk. Lee Sin is a melee fighter.
Wrong game. Hey, what's going on, guys? It's Jaded with the Monk this time around. We're going to be diving into, and if you're interested in playing melee at all in Diablo 3, maybe you're tied up, you don't know which to pick, Barbarian or Monk, it's going to really speak to your playstyle of, do you like the raw power of the Barbarian, or do you lean more towards the quick and nimble, more finesse type of characters in games? Because that's definitely where the Monk lies. And I'm going to break down all the skills that we currently have in the beta right now. Alright, so starting off here with all your primary abilities, these are spirit generators, and across the board all have the same amount generated per attack. And the first one you get is Fist of Thunder. This one, and I should note, like all three of these, and I'm pretty sure even the way of the 100 Fist will work, they all have a 1-2-3 combo system, so 1 hit, 2 hit, and then the third hit generally is the big finisher, the payoff for using this skill. And for Fist of Thunder, it's a small cleave type attack, and it knocks back your enemies. The first rune you get actually is a very interesting rune. So the interesting thing about this is on your first attack, it actually will teleport you to the enemy. And it doesn't teleport you on the second or third, so you can kind of use it to dash around really fast in combat. And since with these combos, the combo falls off in about, I want to say about 2 seconds. And what I mean by that is you do the first attack, and then if you wait 2 seconds, it won't do the second attack of that skill, and it'll reset. So you can teleport around pretty rapidly if you wanted to. The second primary you get is Deadly Reach, and this pretty much just makes your attacks have a very long reach, and you can sit back from a distance without taking damage. Without any runes, it's just a straight line, and then the third one is a very, very long attack, and it goes straight through any monsters. But if you add the rune, it creates this sort of trident, I guess you could say, since it's called Piercing Trident, that on the first attack it's just one sort of straightforward attack, and then the second one is a splitting V shape, and then the third one is your trident attack, and you get a very nice like AoE effect off of that. There's nothing other than damage that this skill does, so it's just a raw damage skill right now. But taking a look at the later runes, this one increases your armor by 50% for 4 seconds, and it's the third part of the combo, so it creates like a nice defensive way of using this skill. And you could really keep that buff up like all the time. There's no reason you couldn't with enough attack speed. Of course you're going to be weaving in other skills, but for the most part you're going to have 50% armor like almost all the time. That's huge. And then this one you get at level 54, which is pretty late in the game, but it's similar to the Barb's runes on his primaries, where it increases your damage of all attacks, and this is by 18%. It lasts 30 seconds, so essentially you could just use this skill once every 30 seconds if you didn't like the damage output or whatever, just to use that as like a buff. So that's an interesting way to use this skill. And then moving on to Crippling Wave, probably my favorite, just because it deals the same-ish damage as Fist of Thunder, but it does it in a full circle. Like, not only is the whole skill have like a cleave to it, but the final third swing has like a AoE all around you, 360.
360.
And another part of it is it's a debuff, so it slows movement speed and attack speed for a short duration. And there are no runes for it in the beta right now, but taking a look at an interesting one here, there's kind of polar opposite runes here. One, it will make the enemies you hit deal 20% less damage for 3 seconds, and then a later one will make enemies take 10% additional damage from all attacks. And I'm not sure, it doesn't really specify if it'll take 10% from all classes, just you, just monks. Like it's not real clear on that. I'm pretty sure it's going to be by everyone. And then moving on to the secondary, so these are all spirit spenders. The first one, Lashing Tail Kick. Without a rune, this just is a small cleave that knocks back, does a lot of damage. Costs 30 spirit, not a big chunk, especially if you're running one of the passives later where you have a ton of spirit. So the first rune you get with this turns it into a 360 damaging skill, and it also increases it a little bit. And with the rune, I really enjoyed this ability. I used it the most out of all the spenders, just because it was a simple high damage skill, didn't cost a lot of spirit, very effective. Moving on to Tempest Rush, this is a channeled ability, much like Rapid Fire on the Demon Hunter. It's very satisfying to just plow through a group of enemies with it, and nothing can stop you. You feel like unstoppable, and you're just knocking everything out of your path. Great feeling skill. And the only rune you get in the beta, it just reduces the amount of spirit during the channeling part down to 8. Personally, I feel like this skill doesn't do enough damage, and it's more of a, I want to say, escape type ability, because the damage it deals is very, very low. In comparison to every other skill you get, it only deals 50% weapon damage while running. It can knock the same enemy like multiple times, but it never felt like it was just out DPSing other skills, running into them over and over. So I feel it's more of a get out of a bad situation type ability. Also, it does essentially do a little bit of CC by knocking back everything in your path, so it kind of interrupts everything a bit. Wave of Light, the third one, not a huge fan of this. Just no one's really using it. Also, I noticed in the beta, I don't see any monks taking this. It costs so much spirit, but that's not really the problem. Like, the skill itself just feels, I don't know, not as epic and grand as it should be. It's this giant bell that comes down, and then you punch the bell, and it creates like this ripple effect, and it's supposed to deal, I would think a ton of damage to everything in the area, but it just doesn't feel like that. Like, I don't know, maybe they just need to increase the sort of AoE of it, but for the most part, it felt kind of weak, and maybe that's too because you don't get any runes. Like, I noticed that about a lot of abilities without runes, they just are not as spectacular as other abilities. And taking a look at some you'll get later here, this one's just a flat damage increase on the initial damage, so like when the bell comes down, and this one you can reduce it to be only 40 spirit, but generally unimpressed so far with that ability, with that skill. Moving on to the defensive section, Blinding Flash. This is really a good CC skill. So it creates a flash of light, it blinds everything in 20 yards, which is a huge range. It just doesn't work as well on elites. They recover faster, and then they just have a 30% chance to miss. So this is similar to any other crowd control that stuns or is gonna fear. It's just a really strong AoE CC, and the blind portion of it actually kind of causes a confusion. They just kind of walk around a little bit. They're actually like blind, like true to the skill's name. I know it's crazy. The only rune you get just increases its duration by 1 second, so it's good, but nothing really interesting there. And then here's another buff one that you get later in the game. Generally a lot of the more interesting runes are later in the game. So for 3 seconds after you use it, you're going to be buffed to deal 30% additional weapon damage as holy. So pretty strong stuff. Moving on to Breath of Heaven. This is a simple heal, and it also heals your entire party. So this ability a while ago actually didn't have a cooldown and was spammable. And I was worried that they would keep it like that, but they actually put a really nice cooldown on it. It's 15 seconds now, which is pretty decent in the Diablo mindset. And the first rune you're going to get with this at level 14 as of now is gonna make it do like a AoE damage as well. And I don't know if this is gonna like radiate off of you, radiate off your whole party. Like it could potentially be a really strong AoE damage skill. But fairly cheap, fairly cost effective, gets the job done. Simple skill. And yet again, another buff to the damage that you do. And this one's fairly lengthy, 45 seconds. So whenever you use Breath of Heaven, it's going to increase the damage of your attacks by 15%. And you unlock this at level 32. So with a cooldown of 15 seconds, of course, you're going to... it doesn't say it changes the cooldown, so I'm just guessing. You can always keep this up. So moving on to techniques here, Dashing Strike. This, I feel, conflicts with the rune of Fists of Thunder. So a lot of people are potentially going to replace Dashing Strike, which was a big part of the monk's mobility throughout the whole beta up until now. So Dashing Strike will teleport you and then also root the enemy or your target. But it does cost spirit, and I feel like it does the same thing as a spirit generator that you get early on. Like, I don't really see the purpose of the skill anymore other than once you start getting runes. So let's take a look at those. The first one you get is going to increase your movement speed for 25% after you use this ability for 3 seconds. It's great, adding more mobility to an already mobile skill, kind of similar to Vault's extra movement speed with the passive for Demon Hunter. And then of course, looking at the very last one, I always find the later ones to be a little more interesting sometimes. So you receive a 20% dodge chance after using this. So helping out you taking damage, being in the thick of things, doing what monks do best. All right, Exploding Palm, 40 spirit cost on this. And the interesting thing about this skill is whatever target you put this on, it explodes and deals 30% of that target's max life as physical damage to everyone. So if it's a very high HP elite or something, it's gonna explode and like pretty much devastate everything. So another fun ability to use too, visually like really just gory and visceral and impressive. Taking a look at the runes again, this sounds to me like a really good spirit generator. So if the target you hit with it explodes, you'll gain 5 spirit for every enemy caught in the blast. So if there's like 20 little, fallen or whatever is around you, there's going to be tons of mobs in this game just swarming you. That's going to be a lot of spirit to just everything caught in the blast. And then I found this one curious because it doesn't do anything but increase the bleed duration. It's still the same damage, it just increases the time you have to kill it, which is kind of boring, but also kind of useful, as like you don't want to put it on something, use it to do damage, and then the bleed falls off, and then you don't get the exploding effect at the end after killing it. And then some wording on this final rune here caught my attention. Instead of bleeding, the target will burn, so similar, it's just going to deal a little bit more damage. Same duration, but it's going to explode and deal 60%, which is twice as much, but it's a dot instead of just instant damage. It says this effect can happen multiple times, so I'm wondering if you kill somebody while using this rune, like with the explosion effect, it's going to create like chain explosions, which could be pretty fun, So the focus section, again, another section we don't get to yet. Cyclone Strike. We got this earlier in the beta. Again, they've moved it up. It sort of sucked everything in an AoE around you towards you and just did some damage. Very useful ability, actually. Was a big fan of that. And then for mantras, these were also early on in the beta. They've removed them, just like the barbs sort of shouts, and then mostly every class's group buffs have been pushed to later levels because they're not super useful early on, which makes sense. So looking at the passives now, the first 2 you get is just a straight flat 10% run speed, useful. The second one you get, damage you deal reduces enemy damage, so a debuff to anything you hit. And then the third one increases your max spirit by 100, which is quite a significant chunk of spirit, considering you start with 150, so this bumps you up to 250 spirit. That's a large resource pool to work with. So this is basically what I run with on my monk in the beta currently. I like Crippling Wave just because it's a 360 damage. I really like that about the primary, just having a really nice AoE. Although Deadly Reach with the rune has potentially more damage if the mobs line up, but I just really like the sweeping sort of cleave AoE that Crippling Wave does. And then for the secondary, Lashing Tail Kick, again, another similar type 360 AoE just to spam your spirit away. For the third ability, Blinding Flash, I love this ability. I think it's a really strong CC, and it's good to just have some utility on you. And then for the fourth, I kind of go back and forth on this. Exploding Palm is a really fun skill to use, a lot of damage, great way to spend your spirit. I liked having Dashing Strike just to get from place to place faster. And also, of course, you can go back and use Fist of Thunder with the first rune you get, which is very similar currently. And then for the passive, I stuck with the 100 extra spirit just to give you that extra pool to work with. So that is the monk. I just wanted to take a moment here and say thank you to everyone who's taken time out of their day to write a comment, write a message. I even had a guy found me in the beta and said he actually saw my video and really enjoyed it. So I just want to say thanks back to all those people, because it's good to know that the work you're putting in is not all for nothing. So thank you guys, and if you want to check any of the other classes out, of course there's going to be links at the end as usual, and I'll see you guys next time.
We will meet again.